navigating our tech fun.
All right, we are off. Take it away, Erin.
All right. Ooh, tiny print. Glad I have my reading glasses on. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for what is probably, I think this is our first like real working DAC meeting of the year, which is very exciting, especially given all that 2020 has brought to us. So we're excited to get this work underway. I think just real quickly, in the name of a little bit of reconnection, I would ask, I'm going to do a quick request in terms of, and hopefully this will all work, everybody can use the chat function. If you would just introduce your name, your school affiliation for a little reminder, and what you are most looking forward to with some anticipated holiday time. So I think that'd be a good quick connect for folks. If you'd use your chat feature to kind of share with folks what you're most looking forward to, because it's good to have those things, right? So we'll give folks a moment to do that. Please let us know if you have any challenges.
Pajamas. I see Stephanie with baking cookies. My 23-year-old son told me we are going to bake massive quantities of cookies this season.
Yes, I'm both happy and a little concerned that that activity has already started in my house and will surely continue for the next several weeks.
Lori, I just learned something new about you with the snowboarding.
Yeah, me too.
Maybe we can hold a chairlift meeting sometime.
If we get snow.
Yeah, that's true.
I have to try out my new knee.
Seeing lots of movie watching too.
I highly recommend, I think it's called Jingle Jangle. Very cool, involves STEM and girls, and it's very cool. Inventing, wonderful movie.
Vanessa, what grade is your child in at launch?
She is a 6th grader.
Oh, one's a 5th grader.
And I have a sophomore son as well that went to STEM launch when it first opened and through 8th grade.
And where does he go now?
He goes to the Denver School of Arts. He is a guitar player.
Nice. All right, everybody. Well, please feel free to, if you haven't had a chance yet to get in there, peruse what everybody's contributed. And with that, I think we have a very packed agenda today. Again, we've got, I think lots of aspirations for the year and things we want to get moving. So with that, Jack, I'm going to hand over to you for the calendar.
Yes, thank you. So we are getting started, as you can see, the first part of December, which is almost halfway through the school year. Aaron and I have spent some time working through what we believe can be our calendar for the rest of the year. I will stop scrolling so I don't make you dizzy. But essentially, we're going to go a month from tonight before we have our next meeting. We're going to meet again on January 6th, and then we're on an every other Wednesday rotation. So last year we were meeting once a month as a whole DAC, and then there were individual meetings with the subcommittees as needed. We've got a pretty aggressive calendar in getting a late start. So we've planned out an every other week format. And if you look at the topics going down the center, we're basically Board of Education work and then whole DAC, and then Board of Education and whole DAC. So alternating that through the year. And what that means is we're going to focus on the SAC work. We're going to start that tonight. That's about an hour of tonight's meeting. And then at some point in the year, we will work on the UIP simplification, which are the two chunks of work that the board has asked us to do as the DAC. When we get Dave involved is a question mark right now. But those two areas of work this school year, again, are going to be on alternating weeks or alternating meetings. And then the whole DAC is where we're going to do some of the structural work to become more self-sufficient, mapping out plans for succession, for training, for onboarding, those sorts of things that allow DAC to be in existence with more concrete notions, more structure moving forward. That's been big on my list, to leave the group in a better place than we've come into it, so people know what to expect, and we've got some recurring tasks and recruiting and backfilling positions. So that's what it looks like this year. We will send out invitations. You don't necessarily need to write all this down tonight. A couple of notes: the next meeting is a Board of Education meeting night. So we would not expect Lori and Jamie to join us. And then March 24th is in the middle of spring break. We decided to leave that on the calendar since we don't really know what's going to happen, but we, if nothing, we're flexible, and we'll see how that goes as we get toward the end of March. We may cancel it or just have some offline work that we do. But again, we're going to go through June 9th at this point. Aaron and I have been talking about this group meeting through the summer to onboard new members, maybe in future years. So we've left that part of the calendar off for now. We've got, again, a pretty aggressive list of to-dos this year. So I'll stop talking for a minute and ask if there are any questions or clarifications or feedback on that.
Hey, Jack, I do think maybe somebody else is going to jump in, but I am wondering if you should address how this does or does not change the previous subcommittee structure that the DAC had for UIP charter and spending priorities.
How it does or does not. So this year, as we've talked about in a previous meeting, this is a building year, kind of an off year for DAC, where we're going to work on the DAC structure, and then we're going to tackle these two pieces of work. Given the condition of the budget and COVID, the spending priorities isn't going to formally meet as a subcommittee. And we're choosing to do this work as a full committee, as a full DAC committee, so that we can look across the boundaries of subcommittees this year. And that's really in the direction that we want to go as a DAC in later years anyway. where we can participate across subcommittee lines where our interests lie, as an option, right? You'll have an opportunity as a DAC member to be involved with UIP or charter or spending, or the special work that we're doing at your will. Does that answer?
It does. I just think I'm just trying to create a bridge for folks between what they knew to be the structures last year and prior to what you guys are proposing this year. So I think that's really helpful. Yep. And they may still have questions about that. So
this is definitely a test year in a lot of ways. And so I hope we have communicated that through emails and meetings enough. The flexibility and some patience, I think, are going to be extremely important this year, all the way around. Any other comments?
Yeah, I have some concerns about meeting during a board meeting for a number of reasons. One is the senior staff is a lot of times are at the board meeting. So like Dave Baina often is at a board meeting. And then obviously, you know, Jamie and I can't be at this meeting, and we want to be able to keep up with what's going on. And the other question I have is more of a technological question. Can the district have 2 Zoom meetings at the same time?
I believe from a technology standpoint, it's possible. We have probably lots of Zoom meetings happening during the day all at the same time. From a community interest perspective, it could be challenging for community members who want to observe, since both of these meetings are sort of public and intended to be public for transparency reasons. If there are community members who want to see what's happening in the board meeting and also see what's happening in the DAC meeting, they would be torn between the 2 meetings. That's just a public community engagement issue with meeting on the same night. But technically, Lori, I believe it is possible to run both Zoom meetings at the same time.
Actually, Roddy, I think, are you still on? I don't know if that's a point of information you're able to provide us information about in terms of the streaming, the public streaming capacity on the, I think it's, is it YouTube?
We currently are only set up with one YouTube account and one Zoom account that streams to it. So we can only live stream one meeting at a time. So we have to juggle the timing of the DAC meeting with the board meeting so that they don't overlap in terms of live streaming.
Great. Well, that helps simplify things.
Yes. So as I just mentioned, flexibility and patience. So we'll address that and see if we can move the alternating week to a Tuesday or a Wednesday. We definitely want to maintain that rhythm with the aggressive nature of what we want to accomplish this year.
Thank you, Roddy, for clarifying.
Any other comments? Then Aaron, I'm going to turn that back over to you for the communications role. And I'm bringing that up.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to go ahead and actually drop that in the chat as well. So I just put in, hopefully, information that is not a surprise to anybody here. One of the other dynamics that the DAC leadership has been navigating this year, Maura Devine stepped down from her role in coordinating sort of the communications, documentation, outreach function that she had been playing for us over the past year. And we are looking for somebody to step into that role. So we tried to be really explicit about what we thought that would look like for this year. And again, hopefully some folks have had a chance to think about it. And I'm just going to kind of open the floor for either clarifying questions about that role, and then folks, looking at who might be interested. I think Jack and I are definitely feeling a bit strapped, as you can imagine, or actually I imagine all of us have felt in some different ways, and would really just like to make sure that, again, another set of eyes are going on things that are going out, are able to respond to communications and get communications out to the different folks who are involved in the work of the DAC.
This is where you raise your hand.
Virtual or real.
And we'll likely end up like tiger cubs if you've had any young kids get into scouting, where we don't have a pack, rather a den if we don't have volunteers. Do a little arm twisting to make that happen. There's quite a bit in the realm of communication that we do need assistance with. We really need to get that filled.
Hey, Jack and Aaron, I'm not sure if you guys have looked at bylaws around officer positions, but I do believe it needs to be a parent or community member and not a staff member, just to put that out there so people know. We can double check that. We should double check that.
Our desire is that it would be a parent or a community member with the district staff at capacity and beyond already.
An important clarification. Thank you, Tracy.
So
I am
with
also
lots of awkward silence, we can move on and do some arm twisting another time.
And I think some of this too might be looking at what flexibilities we might have. I would also offer, if anybody in the group has recommendations about how we might be able to go about maybe filling some of the tasks, or potentially if there's somebody else with again, creative problem solving, we might be tapping into that for this year, because this is definitely a helpful and critical role in terms of moving the DAC forward.
All right, well, I will move on then to the next agenda item. And there's an opportunity for you to consider that role and check one of the boxes in the survey that's coming out. So Aaron and I put together a skills survey for DAC members that we will email you separately. It'll be a Survey Monkey format. And what we're asking is for you to check the boxes of experience or talents, skills that you have in the context of you offering them to the DAC. There are items such as facilitation, marketing, conflict resolution, communications. That's one of the items. Web development. We've got a lot of tasks and ambitions, and we'd like to know what the skills are in our group. And so again, we urge you to check the boxes where you'd like to offer those skills, not just that you have them, but that you're willing to offer them up when they are needed within the group. That will go out most likely tomorrow to your individual emails, and we'll put a deadline on there, probably Sunday evening, Monday morning kind of time frame, and ask that you give that some attention in the next few days. This is for us. We intend as a DAC to maintain a database of people and contacts, those sorts of skills, leadership roles, and succession planning with those roles, and knowing what skills and experiences we have on tap is going to be very helpful for that. Are there any questions on that? Any comments?
So Jack, I might just illustrate this just a smidge more in terms of, you know, how did we land that something like this might be helpful? And we were talking about it specifically in relation to the board priority around the UIP being more accessible to the community. And we were talking about leveraging skills in communications. And who, is there anybody, I think it might have been both like communications and potentially graphic, like infographics or graphic design or something along those lines. We're like, well, do we know anybody that does that? Who else might be in a position to help with that? Which led us to this idea of, do we even realize some of the assets that we might have available within the DAC to help with some of the tasks in front of us? And so I just want to kind of provide hopefully a very applied illustration of what we're looking to do with this information.
Thank you. So that is the housekeeping items that we wanted to work through before we jumped into the SAC. Erin, the SAC work rather, am I missing anything before we move on?
Nope. I think we're on target.
All right, so this is our official start to the work. What I would like to do is refresh your memory. I'm going to drag this over here. This is the workflow model that we are doing our best to try out this year. We're not going to walk through it again. It's really just to jog your memory that we wanted to define work and establish ownership of roles and tasks and information between various district groups, kind of check in with the board at a midpoint and follow the process through to a deliverable to the Board of Education at some point in the future. The reason for this is to clearly identify what we're focusing on, what the work is about, what the intended outcome is related to, and that those of us in the DAC that are going to be performing the work have some sense of accomplishment, some sense of value that we've offered to the district staff and the board, and that we've learned something potentially along the way, but basically having a meaningful exchange with everyone that's participating in the work. So again, it's a draft. We're doing our best to align to it, and we will edit and publish as appropriate. Another document that we created that we believe will become a template is a memo of understanding, and it just puts into text more of a narrative to accompany the flow chart. And again, draft, we're testing it out with this School Accountability Committee initiative. But where did the work come from? So where did the work originate? This came from Jamie and Lori from the board as a whole, but through the liaisons, that's where this originated. The summary of the work, we want to initiate contact with the SACs throughout the district to survey them for membership roles, their engagement level, their meaningful value, those sorts of things. What the attendance, what their meeting schedule is, so that some of us can actually attend those meetings in our home schools, the schools that we're connected to. As an outreach, we want to let them know that the DAC exists and that one of our obligations is to provide support to their SAC. And then follow-up communications this year. What is it that the schools need, the SACs, and what can the DAC offer in the way of assistance? So at a high level, that's what we're attempting to do as the DAC. The Board of Education's vision was written by Jamie and Lori, and it outlines sort of the overarching vision for the work. What's the outcome? How does it, what's the meaning to the board? And that adds some direction for us before we get started.
Jack,
I'm
it might
hoping-
be helpful if you zoom in a little bit. I don't know if it's really small on other people's screens, but it is very small on mine. I've seen it a little bit before, so I don't know that others have. And I just
Okay.
want to make sure they can see.
Even with reading glasses, it's a bit tiny.
Can somebody tell me how to zoom in on Google Docs? Right there. Better?
Yeah, I might go one more up. That seems better to me. Aaron, do you agree? Lori, do you agree? I see you looking into your screen. Okay.
Thank you for speaking up.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll give you a minute to read the Board of Education vision. Then we felt it was important to ground it in the strategic plan of the district and connect to the Elevate plan specifically, why the work sort of is empowered by the strategic plan. So we've listed that specifically. And then statutory, the policy documents that intersect with SACs and the work that we're going to do. List those in advance as references, maybe some pre-reading where we need to do that. The DAC bylaws are definitely in there because one of our obligations is to have interaction with the SACs and the community. Then there are district policies that are links to documents that our members can follow and read. Again, that sort of lend credibility to the work and the mission. And then we felt it was important to establish a timeline with milestones. We do believe that this will be a multi-year project. I mean, it's going to be ongoing for sure because that's what we need to do on a yearly basis. But this initial outreach and support structure that we intend to provide the SACs is going to be most likely a multi-year plan. So this year, before May, we want to build and distribute the first survey. We're going to hit that tonight, start work on that, designate some DAC members to initiate contact, and then compile the gathered data throughout the spring and present that back to the DAC, sort of reset the table, if you will, for the work moving into the summer and fall for next steps. And then what the deliverables will look like. We want to do our best to define what it is we're working toward and presenting back to the board before we start. And we would have the results of the needs assessments, survey results, maybe contact information, meeting schedules, any sort of processes that the SACs have in place. We don't know what we're going to get. We don't know what level of quality there'll be or level of depth. So we'll assemble that and present that to the DAC for future steps. And then we intend to have our own recommendations about what the next steps would look like after this year. And that would be sort of a give and take, a back and forth with the board and district staff on what next year would look like to advance the effort. So this document, we've called it a memo so far, but it's the guiding principles of the work. And for me personally, and I believe for a lot of the members of the DAC, it gives us the goal line, the finish line, with some very clear expectations about what we're working toward as a group. And I know from the spending priorities, that was a bit of a hurdle for us. And this document specifically is created with with that end zone, that finish line in mind. Starting to see a couple of comments. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you, Tara. Any comments about that as questions? Any other subsections that you think would be important to add?
I have a question. So
Yes.
is our goal to establish SACs in schools that don't have them currently and ones that already have them to find out what their needs are in order to develop a UIP at the district level that meshes with so that we can just investigate what the root causes are in a more accurate way? Or I see that engagement is, so are we trying to, what exactly is like ultimately the goal? We don't have a survey set up now. We're going to wait and develop a survey. Like what is like the meat of what we want to do?
So we have a draft of a survey to get you thinking. We're going to go into a couple breakout rooms tonight and toss that around among two groups and come back with some feedback on it, getting different perspectives. The ultimate goal is that the DAC needs to support SACs in the future. And so the work this year is really kind of setting a baseline, understanding what we have, what's working well, what's not, where the areas of need and support are, and then presenting that back to the board and developing a plan to positively execute on our mission to support SACs. So I don't know what the ultimate goal is other than to fulfill our obligation to support the existence of SACs. And we haven't done that to date.
And so, Jack, I might add a little bit more context, and then we'll also reach out, I think, to Tracy and Lori and Jamie to weigh in on this as well. So, Lisa, you remember last year we had the SAC ad hoc committee, which kind of, in some ways, initiated some of these much larger conversations. And as Jack alluded to, this has always been a part of the DAC's scope. So I think what Jack was describing about delivering on some of that responsibility, I think is very clearly in the scope of DAC work. But it also connects, I think, to these much larger policy statements, which is why we felt it was really important to be clear here, not only within district policy, but also board policy. So I think it's just trying to really connect and operationalize some of these policy statements and say, what does this really mean? So with that, I would turn it over to Jamie and Lori and Tracy to kind of either more clearly articulate some of those components or get at that larger vision.
You know, Lori or Jamie, I'm happy to let you jump in. I will mention before you do that there are other districts, when you look at how DACs run in other places, where there's a tighter connection between the district accountability committee and the school accountability committees. And I would say a better opportunity for the DAC to collect feedback from the SACs on important district-wide issues to then inform what the DAC shares with the board and board decision-making. And our board, I know, really greatly values community input and community engagement. And so I think there is an idea that we need to work toward that kind of model. Given the pandemic environment that we're all in right now, given some of the feedback, one of the things I want to acknowledge is Jack, Aaron, Jamie, and Lori's efforts that you're hearing about tonight and that you heard about at the last meeting I think in addition to wanting to meet the expectations that the board has set for this year, which Jack's talked a lot about, they also wanted to respond to some of the feedback that DAC members gave at the end of last year. And some of that feedback was, it feels often like we are too much put in the position of needing to be the subject matter expert when we aren't. We spend a lot of time, energy, and effort in the weeds and in the details, especially like with the charter group. Is there a better way to utilize our time, our energies, and our expertise? And is there a better way for us to connect with a broader group of parents and community members? And so those were some themes that came from the DAC feedback from last year that I think is also part of why you're seeing a shift in our work for this year. But the pandemic is giving us an opportunity to also do work a little bit differently this year, and maybe make some headway in shifting how the DAC runs, and giving our board a chance to really set some clear expectations for what they want the DAC to accomplish in any given year. So those are just some additional comments that I would make, and some background around some of what Jack and Aaron are sharing with you tonight. And Jamie and Lori, I'm not sure if you want to add in from the board perspective or not at this point.
I think that it's just a natural fit for gathering this information from all our schools, because if we're held accountable as a district, that is all our schools. So whatever information we can bring up from each individual SAC, I don't feel like, how do I say this? The information that we put in our UIP should coincide with the information in the school's UIPs, and it should just all flow. And so it's a natural fit just to put it all together. So that's my take on it, being the newbie.
I don't want to belabor anything, but I would say certainly a big piece of this for me is definitely what Tracy mentioned about the connection between the DAC and the SACs, and really the DAC being able to see kind of the value of the work and the effort they put in. Something that really resonated with me was a statement that Vanessa made about really appreciating the learning that was happening and being able to know and understand the district at that level, but then not really feeling like there was an outlet to do a lot with that information. And while we shifted some so that we're not expecting a lot in that subject matter space, there is this connection between those two groups, and the DAC really being able to take that learning and that information, that knowledge, and kind of pay it forward a bit, if you will, towards the SACs, but really growing the number of folks who are really engaged in the district, understanding the district, or are putting forward this amazing work that's happening, looking at the documents connection to Elevate, and really helping the community kind of understand that all of these different pieces flow together, so that it's not just district and district staff and some of these committees driving that forward, but it's our entire community that really has to come together to be successful in making Elevate what we hope it will be long term.
Which also would grow new people to be part of the DAC. People see the value at the school level, they'll want to contribute to it at the district level.
I know I asked this maybe a year ago, but is there a set way that SACs are supposed to be like members, that they're supposed to have like a composition, like you have to have a community member, a classified, a certified, a parent, because this is, I love what this is turning into. And there's a lot of voices that are going to be excited about having, like the communication going to, this is what our school wants to provide upwards to the DAC that's going to then speak to the board. So is it already built in what the SAC is comprised of? And my second thing is, I just really want to impress upon everyone that this is a positive thing and not like we're looking down on them, like, what are you doing in your SAC? That it's a really positive flow of information, like we're learning from you, because that would be bad.
So Lisa, two things based on that comment. First, this is like a perfect segue into our next section of our agenda. So I'm going to hold that, like, what should a SAC be doing? And I'm going to say that from like an extremely base level of statutory obligation. The second part that you mentioned about, I think, sort of tone and intention, I would really ask that you, and quite frankly, every member of this group that's looking at this potential draft or at this draft survey that we are going to be sharing with you, really look at it through that lens of how might this be interpreted? Is this coming across as an information seeking a continuous improvement opportunity, not an audit? Because I think that honestly is, I would say, an extreme concern of mine is that the practices that come out of this, I think I have been extremely concerned about adding any additional pressure or stress to our district administrative teams, because there is so much coming at them. And so in terms of gathering information, I think really to your question about what happens next, and I think it's about what support do you need? What do we need to have in place at the district? What things are really rigid and what things are flexible, and each school is really allowed to kind of modify. And I think hopefully those are the kinds of things that will go into the recommendations that come out of this work. But I think clearing that first hurdle of getting accurate information in a way that doesn't convey fear or pressure or all the shoulds that we know are out there, I think is really important.
Hey, Erin, can I just add to that?
Please.
I think that's a really important ask of the group, to look at it with the lens of, this is really about information gathering so that we can write some expectations and guidance that makes sense for our community, not are you doing this right or are you doing this wrong, and judgment perspective. And I just want to reiterate that from an equity lens. So one of the things that Jack, Erin, Lori, and Jamie and I have talked about in the SAC work is, let's not make an assumption around what we think is valuable to families as they engage as a SAC. And I'm saying that given my experience as a principal who served in different communities with different socioeconomic status, Latino communities, African-American communities, diverse in many ways. And from community to community, I did have SACs in all of those schools. And I had SACs in schools that I supervised when I was a principal supervisor. And from community to community, the SACs looked different because the parents had different interests in what they wanted to talk about when it came to the education of their students. And I think it's really important for us to allow schools to have some of that flexibility so that this doesn't become a compliance exercise aligned to regulation, but that it still allows for powerful community engagement based on what that particular community wants to talk about and do for the students that it serves. And at the same time, find pieces and parts that we can weave across all schools that can be consistent. And so I think it's going to be a balance of that. And I don't want our principals or the parents who are currently serving on the SACs that are in place to feel like we're trying to make them conform to something that we're going to come up with. because some people are doing really great work together, and we might want to just allow that to continue, right? And so that's an important point that Erin makes about, let's make sure whatever we send out, I don't know the timeline of what we're sending out to, that matters in terms of everything else going on, but and people taking it the right way. But it's also just about the way that the DAC drafts it. And so I just wanted to reiterate Erin's point and maybe put an equity lens on it as well.
So I just have a quick question, and this may be getting into the weeds, so I appreciate the next section. So Erin or Jack, doesn't fit here, you can parking lot it or do whatever you want. So I totally appreciate the narrative. It's very helpful. I think my question is, so the support of SACs, I love all the things, is really what and how can DAC members support SAC? Like, what is it that we can do that will assist SACs? If it's just information gathering and just being present to hear and listen so that we can take it to Jamie and Lori, right? Like, I don't really know. I guess that's my question, because I think it was the last, right? To support DAC members will support SAC members. And I'm like, okay, what does that, how, in what way can we support SACs? I don't know the answer to that. So I do appreciate the survey. I do appreciate any of the narrative. I think to Lisa's question about what are SACs supposed to look like even those, their own little training of like, okay, I am happy and thrilled to support SACs and have sort of a definition in that way. And I wouldn't even know what I would say to say, I, a DAC member, can support SACs in what way? And so that again, maybe for the next meeting, but that's what struck me. I was like, I'm in, and I wouldn't know what to tell them like that. So that's really my question around the next, whatever the next is after whatever that is.
So I might do a quick, hopefully addressing of your question, Tara. I think, so we'll dive into this like baseline, like statutory, like says this, but then I think honestly, part of that has been the intention of keeping the DAC membership current for this year, because it might have implications for recruitment. What skill sets or experience might we have? If we want to head in a particular direction, what either sort of like development or coordination might be needed by the DAC itself? I think there's also some great opportunities to learn from other districts around the state about how have they taken on these roles, and what elements do we like and what elements are like, that's not for us. So I think part of this information gathering phase includes those components so that we can intentionally sequence and build out structures that support the goals that we identify. So I don't know if that, I realize that's not super specific, but I think that's really the intent, is that we don't have this like, and here's the end goal, and we're going to go through these like phases when we already know what we want to do. And that's not where we're at. I think we're really trying to use the data and including sort of the interest in talents and capacities of the DAC membership to say, what are we in a position to do? What actually maybe makes, as Tracy described, in a principal, what's more appropriate for a principal supervisor to do? Like, that's not actually DAC lane. So I think kind of working out some of those things is part of the work. Any other comments? I would say Lori, Jack, Tracy, Jamie?
Only that we should move to the breakouts as soon as practical.
Great. Okay, thank you. All right, so with that, I would also say if questions are coming up through this, please either put them in the chat or bring them up in conversation. So real quickly, I'm going to just share quick high-level overview of school accountability committees. Okay, there we go. I think. So, oh, decided to go, whoa, auto, pardon. The first thing, so here we go, Lisa, the membership. The principal, one teacher who provides instruction, 3 parents, 1 adult member, and 1 person from the community. So again, this is sort of the, okay, here's what's outlined in statute as the sort of ideal representation, but I think, again, the district has some flexibility about what, do we want to get more specific? Are there other practices that we might want to look at? Some of those kinds of things. There's some, I would say, some specific information about parents must exceed the, trying to get a heavy family engagement component is the intent. Again, that there is strong community representation within this group, that it's not just another sort of iteration of a staff team. Okay, here are the responsibilities. Sorry, guys. Apparently, I'll be honest, this Zoom functionality is not as familiar to me. I'm not used to it quite running on its own like this. Responsibilities really are around preparation of the improvement plan, spending priorities for the school, looking at monitoring how improvement efforts are going, providing input and recommendation to the DAC and district administration. So I think this is sort of that communication flow that we were referring to. And a focus on supporting the broader family engagement in the school accountability, the district family engagement policy, overall. A couple of things, I think Tracy alluded to this very well, that while there are some of these sort of baseline things that are outlined, there are different considerations. It may look very different. The names, so they, if you use the term school accountability committee, they might not know what you're talking about. And I think, Kim, you had referenced in one of our previous conversations that you guys have a HIT team, right? The Horizon Improvement Team, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's correct.
So again, we want to be a little cautious that there's not an expected naming convention. And there may be other sort of configurations or functions where maybe there's a subcommittee of a PTO that serves some of this function. So I think, again, acknowledging that it could look different in different ways. We'll share this PowerPoint out with you, and I just put a link to some other configurations. So if you want to go looking at sort of what other districts do, again, this is what they've made publicly available on these. So just provide some different models and examples. So that's the high level of that. And I'm going to stop sharing and hopefully stop making you all dizzy. Apologies for that. And with that, I think we've been doing a lot of talking at you. So I think the next piece that we'd really like to dive into is, based on your experience with the DAC, really kind of hearing from you guys what are successful components of the family community engagement sort of in these areas? And then based on your experience in the DAC, how would you define meaningful engagement? So just kind of opening this up for conversation for folks to reflect, what are some of those key criteria? I also, I think, full disclosure, this is not just a, what would I call it? Not just a sharing exercise, but I want to pull this information because I think it might be helpful for us in terms of identifying some criteria that might be that might be useful. So with that, I'm going to put these 2 questions in the chat and would open it up to some of us who have not been talking as frequently to please share your perspectives.
So
What are
is the
some of the
first part,
ways? Oh, go ahead, Vanessa.
is the first question based on, are you asking like my personal experience, like with my school and what has been successful, like from my school to me as a parent or community member?
Yes.
My school STEM launch, I think, is excellent at over communicating. I think the district has gotten better with the communications over the last couple of years, but it felt like STEM launch like goes above and beyond with how they communicate. They seem to find all the different ways. Sometimes it's annoying to get an email, a text, and a voicemail, but I would rather that than the other. So I know that doesn't like necessarily specifically tie into maybe like a SAC function, but that's been important. And our school is like, we have, you know, as a magnet school, we have people from all over the district, all shapes and sizes and, you know, of types of families. So I think that over communication and finding like different and new ways to reach out to people has been really successful.
I would speak just to a SAC team, really the consistency of having that SAC team year to year, just like we have on DAC, because it really does take time to really understand the role and the opportunities that they have to have a voice. And then when they really understand, I think the understanding of the UIP and the budget and all of those pieces, then they're able to really ask good questions. And those questions then really elicit change. But that really does take a team that can stay together over time.
I just want to add something to what Vanessa mentioned. Outside of just the communication and finding different ways to do that with families, but giving families and community different ways to engage with the school. Right. So, and I think often of pre-COVID, I hope you all do as well, as well as where we are at the moment. And I say that to say, you could attend a board meeting if you really, so I'm talking about, it's definitely a charter school, and I can talk about the high school as well, but you could attend a board meeting if you wanted to be engaged in that way. You could you could engage in supporting the school monetarily. You could go to there was a newsletter, like there was a variety of ways to access different kinds of student focused, parent focused, or family focused. If you couldn't get to a parent teacher conference or something, like there's just avenues. And that has changed over time for me as a parent, in which when my kids were younger, I had the capacity, or my oldest or my youngest, and my time in the school to volunteer in the school to engage has changed, and I don't have that capacity, right? So, but I still am engaged in the reading of the newsletters, of the connecting with, like, those kinds of things, I think are critical for different kinds of families to engage in different kinds of ways. Access points, newsletters, materials, let alone ongoing communications, or going to a meeting or attending and doing, Stephanie, some of what you're talking, right? And that's pre-COVID when we could attend meetings. So I think those kinds of engagement things are really critical for different kinds of families, working situations, non-working, like, right, all of the things, and on a very equity, in my mind, lens. Tracy, to your
Yeah,
point.
and I think what you're saying is a really great point, because that does tie more back into the SAC than maybe what I was saying. But SACs could eventually, or SACs that are in good shape now, maybe could leverage the great engagement that schools are already doing, to get some of that information that we're talking. Like, we as a DAC are trying to find ways to engage with SACs to get information, and SACs can eventually use their already in place engagement avenues to get some of that community feedback for their particular school.
I also know it looks very different. And to Kim, actually, I see you unmuted you, but it looks so different at the high school compared to the elementary school. Like my kid, right there, and they've done a good job too. And it looks very different, right? But I think it's critical in ways that I have had the capacity as a parent in these very different ways to access educators specifically, administrators as well, but then general school things, right? And I know it's a lot of work. I just say that out loud, but it has been really helpful. As me as a parent has also changed over time. And I think that's what's been really helpful. Because I hear people, and I work with schools, so I hear people go, oh, parents aren't involved. I'm like, but they're involved. They might be involved in some ways, but just not the ways in which you see them. And I think that's really important. So
I would just add on to what you said exactly, that I think it's identifying right away that parents can be involved in many different ways. It's called Epstein 6 types of parent involvement. And I think every year really naming those for parents and recognizing where they are, exactly what you said, where they are as a parent, and that they are valued for being able to participate in their child's education in that way. And I think identifying that early on, again, helps us later on when parents are available to be committee members and spending more time. So I really, I agree with what you said. And I think it's just a starting point to build these strong parent engagement teams.
Yeah, I would definitely concur. And I think one of the places that my school accountability committee has been really helpful is adapting those communication strategies for my specific school environment, and really saying, you know, in our school environment, these types of strategies work best for parents. And these are the things that are helpful, or these are the things that are frustrating. These are the things that we like or dislike. The other thing that I think is really advantageous when we've had hard decisions to make, whether it's about, you know, spending or how we want to focus, you know, some of our school priorities, getting parent feedback, not only from our, you know, school accountability committee, but also from parents who can't participate, but still want to give some sort of feedback, just knowing that this is an agenda topic and having some background information. And here's the venue by which we're going to be talking about it, so they can get information to parents who might be there, or send an email or send a follow-up with some feedback. That's really been helpful, and a good communication loop that I feel like we have helped to close in our building. It's not perfect, and obviously not every parent who wants to be involved has been, but it does, it's a start of a process.
just more avenues, right? And it always has to evolve. And I think that's what's critical. Yeah.
Okay, guys. I do think this is one of those that we could probably talk for quite a while on this, and this topic will clearly not be the end. But taking a look at time, we definitely want to honor some of the work ahead of us. And please bring the following or the previously mentioned lenses to the draft survey that we will be discussing here. So what we're going to do, so Roddy, facilitation support, we're going to break into our two groups here in just a moment. Jack, would you be willing to drop the survey into the chat for us? Perfect. So especially with groups, sometimes it's helpful to have something to react to rather than, group creation. So please note that this is a spaghetti on the wall survey. Please bring the different lenses. I would maybe specifically implore our administrators, knowing that you will be on the receiving end of this, likely please scrub this through your personal lens and the lens of your peers, and considering language questions. I think, Tara, your question about where will this lead, and are we are we making implications or assumptions about what we will and won't do through these questions? So please bring that lens to the survey. And then let's see, Jack, we're looking at what, maybe 15, 20 minutes on this, and then we're going to wrap up.
Yeah, I would say shoot for 15.
Okay, so you guys, we're going to break into 2 groups for 15 minutes. Please download the survey so that you can have access to it. And we'll take the feedback so that we can bring iterations back around. So with that, Roddy, if you'd split us up, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
And we're back. Roddy doesn't mess around.
Thank goodness.
5-second warning. I did hear your comment, Tracy, and then got the note. Thank you for that. Aaron, I'll just say I don't feel like we got through the whole survey on our end. Our group was talking more about how we frame it, how we communicate the need, the intention, the outcome. It was more about that than the specific questions. The need, the intention, the outcome.
Well, somebody's on delay.
I know. Is anybody else having an issue hearing Jack or hearing two of Jack?
Well, somebody's on delay. I think the answer is yes, Tracy. Okay, so I think we'll just go with the mute norm when possible. So Jack, are you making a proposed next action step?
I don't have one off the top of my head, but I don't feel like we got done. So I'm going to suggest that you and I follow up afterward and come up with next steps and email this group.
Okay, I guess I was maybe a smidge more, I don't know if efficient. I would say we got through it more of a surface level through the whole thing, but I think definitely hit some of the same concerns about framing, delivery, messaging, things like that. And I think we could spend a little bit more time refining some of the individual items and sequencing. And so I think, Jack, yeah, we'll come up with a plan to get some good input on survey development before distribution. And then obviously, Tracy, we're gonna have to figure out what and when and how.
So I'm looking at 8:29. I'm a stickler on honoring people's time and meeting agendas. I do feel like we're leaving this short. I'm going to apologize for that. I wish we could have tied a bow on the survey review and have some very clear next steps. What I will commit to is meeting with Erin, compiling my handwritten notes with her update in the documents real time. We will definitely share this back out and get feedback. We're not moving forward without the group in some alignment, how we proceed. The message was definitely heard by me around the framework and the purpose of the survey and making sure that that lands really well with the district principals or SAC leaders.
I think also in terms of next steps, Jack, I also heard we're going to have to be in touch about next meeting date. And I think we'd like to do that somewhat quickly so that people can really have that time and protect it on their calendars.
Yep.
Jack and Aaron, do you have a timeline in mind for this type of survey, just so I can have that on my radar? And I'm sorry if I missed that. I was having some technical issues, which I've since repaired and fixed. Thank you.
I think, Tracy, I'll be honest. I would actually really look to you and some of our other administrators on consultation on that. I think you can kill something like this with poor timing, and all efficacy will go out the window. And so I think it would be unfortunate to blow it on a timing end.
Okay, I can do some thinking about that. And I think some comments from Derek in our breakout group or some things to think about too around that timeline piece that I think Jack will understand what I mean when I say that. So we'll regroup. I'll do some thinking on my end and then we can chat some more.
All right.
Yeah, I just might add on the timing piece. We didn't get to talking about that in our group, but I think that's really important. And this year being so weird with COVID, that there's some of the things that SACs are normally tasked with tasked with that they haven't tackled, like, you know, school accountability plans and things like that. Schools have been given some grace in that space. So teams aren't doing some of that work that they would normally be doing. So that may also affect how this survey looks. Just
I think the notion of pre-COVID is critical. Okay, Lori, Jamie, anything else before we wrap up?
Just a big thank you. This was a pretty productive meeting. And thank you guys for stepping up to do this very important work.
Thank you for your thank you.
Yeah, you guys, you're doing a great job, and I know you hope to get a little bit further down the road, but this is an excellent kickoff, and feels like we have direction and purpose and work in front of us that feels doable.
Vanessa, I really appreciate hearing that. That is the overall mission for me and this DAC this year. So thank you very much.
Awesome. Yeah.
Thank you all so very much. Again, any other feedback, please feel free to reach out to Jack or myself, and we'll be in touch and hopefully have a similarly productive next meeting.
All right, take care, everybody.
And have a good holiday season too, everybody.